But if you want to have that premium brand, you have to be realistic on creating that brand awareness so people will want your brand. So your investment in your marketing is going to be a lot more to generate that profit for the product. So to begin with, you might be selling at a loss because your marketing is so high, but once you get that brand awareness and people want your logo on their product, you're literally winning.
The way I gear my B2C businesses and B2B businesses, what I always do is sort of reverse engineer, and my end goal is always to sell the company in some capacity, because that's how you make your big money, basically. Right, how do you do that? Well, it's got to be worth a value of some sort. Right, how do you get that? Well, it's whether acquiring data, whether it's acquiring customers, whether it's sales, whatever it is, and just keep working backwards from there. I would always, so for example, a mushroom coffee, I would look at, right, how many monthly paying subscriptions do we need to be to piss the local competitors, or not local competitors, the competitors, so they basically buy you out. And that's always my end goal is, right, what do I need to do to annoy enough people for them to buy you out?
The last thing we want people to do is like jump into like a product of some sort and you're only giving yourself like a £15 profit margin. Like what you said, you need to factor in that ad spend. Starting off, you could be spending £5 to £10 per conversion, which is now you're left with like £5. Then obviously if you add in your own shipping fees on top of that, shipping it to the customer, you then got taxes, if any of that's included in it, like you're literally left with a few quid. It's probably not worth it in that sense if you're just doing wire private labeling. So if you were to go for a product where your profit margins, you've got a big area to play around with, you might lose half your profit, but you've still got half sat there. Josh, Anna and Alex, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. So we've got some cool stuff to talk about, and it's definitely going to help a lot of people. Obviously, we want to touch on the profits within business, within branding, different business areas. And also one thing that I think we should really touch on is people comparing all different angles of their business with existing businesses. The first thing I want to touch on is profits. Now, one of the main questions that, is thrown around more than often is, how much profit should I be making on this product? How much profit should, I be selling this for and stuff like that? And I think a lot of people get confused. If you've got a store online with an e-commerce and you're selling 100 products, 150 products, people will generally presume, well, I need to make 20% profit. That's so broad within a full product store. I think one of the best things to figure that out is essentially doing your product research. So if you're selling a dog's bed or you're selling a push bike, you need to do competitor research within that area to figure out where you're going to situate yourself. And once again, that comes down strongly on your brand. If your brand isn't premium, if your brand isn't where you're picturing it to be, you're probably going to be having the wrong pricing, which means your profits are going to be wrong as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm always going to touch on the business element, and for me, because I get the same question, what should I charge? It's almost like a double-ended question. So it's, what is the demand for the product first? Because obviously that will stipulate how much you can charge. So the more the demand is, the more you can raise your prices, because the more, like I said there, in demand it is. So there's that point. Second point is, right, if you're approaching a company, depending on if they're going to use it as scale or if they're actually going to sell it, but if they're going to sell it, let's use that as an example. Are they selling anything similar? And if so, do you know how much they're selling it for and how much they're buying it for? If you can get them key questions out of them, then you know what you can get away with. So for example, if you know your cost price is £10, just make it easy, they're buying it off another company for £20, so that they're making £10 profit as in that company, and they're selling it for £30. Okay, that company's then the actual company who's selling it is making £10 profit. But if you know that, you could sell it to them for £9 as an example, and then they will make that pound. Yeah, they'll make the pound. I've just overcomplicated that. But if you can find out how much they're paying for it, then that will give you the advantage of then trying to undercut. Now, if you don't know that, it's quite vague. Just go in your cost price plus 20%. You can't really go wrong with that. Okay. And I get people say to me, oh my God, is that it? Like, I'm going to make 10 pence, 15 pence. Yeah, you may, but then if they're buying 100,000 pieces, an example, that's how you make your money. Anish is doing that. He's buying his cups for very little, and he's selling them for very little. But Weatherspoons are buying sort of £500,000 worth, so he's making a lot of money in scale. And B2B, if you sell them at ones and twos, you're not going to make much money. So it's all about scale. But plain and simple, if you know how much they're paying, then you can then just undercut slightly. If you don't, then just add 20% of your cost price. That's what I always go off, like rule of thumb.
I think also what you said is comparing your product to what other brands are doing as well, because there's actually no limit to what profit you could put on your product depending on the brand. But it's also being realistic if you want to create like a premium brand. So for example, like the Stanley cups, like it's just a water bottle, and like we all know you can get them off Alibaba really, really cheap. But what people are paying for those is actually ridiculous, just because people want to have that Stanley logo
It's the branding.
on. But if you want to have that premium brand, you have to be realistic on creating that brand awareness so people will want your brand. So your investment in your marketing is going to be a lot more to generate that profit for the product. So to begin with, you might be selling at a loss because your marketing is so high. But once you get that brand awareness and people want your logo on their product, you're literally winning. So it's not necessarily, one, you have to do your competitor research to see what others are selling at, but then it's making a decision, do I want to be more premium than all the competitors out there? Do I want to be middle? Do I want to be like, what's the word? Economic,
Like,
the cheaper version.
The lower one.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called. Like the Tesco's value, or like the cheaper, the replica of like the high end brand, and then you would go from there. But I just think it's really important, if you want to be premium, high end, factor in creating brand awareness, because that's gonna cost you more than the product, basically.
I think like with regards to like product research and stuff like that you touched on, Reece, like a lot of people don't realise you can negotiate with suppliers as well. So profit that's a main interest of people. Do you know what I mean? You want to make as much profit as you can with each product, so let's negotiate with suppliers. Do you know what I mean? If you can withstand that, you're going to invest quite a lot of time into the business moving forward, they're going to negotiate with you moving forward as well.
Just to touch on that, I've literally just been working with a member. I put it in the IC groups recently. 2 ladies who work in the NHS. They have got their own sort of Stanley Cup version.
I know
now,
what you're talking about.
I'm not going to go over the cost price just in case they don't want to tell me. Tell the obvious, but they had to. So they're doing the deal with Aldi, and they wanted 20,000 pieces as an Aldi, the shopping high street shop. Now, anytime you deal with any high street retailers, they will absolutely hammer the margins down where you're literally making next to no profit. But caveat to that, or the plus point of that, brand awareness to get into Aldi stores throughout the whole country, you can't really replicate that. So I said, look, obviously don't make a loss, but don't worry about the profit on this, because the brand awareness that will bring.
Have that on your website.
Exactly.
Everything.
And also the sales, because then you've got then the steps to get in there. But
I didn't know they got in there.
Yeah, so what they're doing now is basically they've agreed everything. So the next steps for them was, because they come to me and say, look, they want to buy it, let's just say they want to buy it for £4 and their cost price is £4.20, so they're going to make 20p loss per item over 20,000, which is a lot. I said, you do know you can go back to the supplier and just say, look, we've got this potential high street retailer who's one of the biggest in Europe. This is a big deal if we get this on board, because obviously then it's going to bring more orders, the knock-on effect. And that's what they've done. They went back and then managed to get it slightly lower than £3.80 or something. So they're making pence margin, but times 20,000. So they're making their margins from there.
Yeah.
But like you said, Josh, people don't know you can negotiate with suppliers. A lot of the time, they will call your bluff. And I tell people all the time, look, go back and just say, look, I've got this potential huge deal. I just need to get these samples with my branding on, and then I'll come back. And 9 times out of 10, that'll work, because especially some of these big Chinese companies, they just want you to hit the MOQ because they can't be bothered to try and change all their production lines or anything like that. So, yeah, definitely have had experience with that. I'll reiterate that. Make sure you go back both sides, not just the one you're trying to sell to, but the one you're buying from as well.
Absolutely. But sticking with B2B, like if it was me, I wouldn't. If you're approaching businesses with a product, like closing a deal with a business, I wouldn't worry too much about profit the first time, because the idea is you want to get into that business first.
100%.
And once you're established within the business, then you can start approaching different businesses. Then you can start working out a bit more of the profit because of credibility.
If they sell quickly, then they can then put their prices up, because then they now want that product.
Just playing a little bit smart with it.
You've got to play long term.
You know what I mean?
A lot of big, so I'm not saying you have to replicate some of these big organisations out there, but they'll be making a loss, like millions of pounds loss for the first 3 years.
Yeah,
knowing that they're going to get the customers further down the line, brand awareness and everything like that. Because I think people forget, B2B, you still want to push your brand. You still, it's one of the most powerful ways to push a brand is B2B, because you're getting in high street stores. So definitely long-term vision, never short-term cash.
No.
That's what I would always say, always long-term. And you can, make the profit margins further down the line. And also, because that's the other question I get is, what happens if I've got a whole store? No, just stick with one product. If B2B, this is, by the way, get one product in there if you can first, and then you can upsell once you've got that relationship forged to then get other products in there.
And that's the thing, once you close your first like B2B deal, you've now got capital there to invest elsewhere. So if you are starting with one product into one business or multiple businesses, it would be great. Once you close those deals, you've got a huge amount of capital there to start investing into more products, similar to what you've pushed already. If you're building relationships with these businesses, most of the time they'll want to hear you. It'll be a lot easier to push your product to them. Moving back to the negotiating side, I think you just touched on that, Alex. Like, it's best to do it from both sides. And a lot of people, when they speak to a supplier, if a supplier comes back and says, or I'll give you an example. So just before we did this podcast, I was speaking to a supplier in China for LED strips, and they came back, the order quantity is 5,000 that I need to place, and they said $4.60. I've gone back to them and I said I'm happy to place the order if it's $4 bang on. They came back, they tried $4.50. I said it has to be $4. Or I'm speaking to other suppliers, they came back, called it at $4. So like, even just that small 60 cents is not much, but times that it's huge. So it's always great when a supplier says to you like, this is the amount for this quantity. In the back of your head, you should be like, right, how cheaper can I get that every single time?
Yeah, don't give up with it either. Don't just wait for one response. Because they say no, let's go back again.
I think you forget their businesses as well. They're obviously their supply and that's their trade, but their business, so they're there to make money.
And they'll put that margin on there to go down and anyway.
They'll have that in their cost valuation and everything like that. But you need to just hammer back. No. You just got to be strong. And I get it, it's quite intimidating the first time you're speaking to these companies, because they will try and hit ridiculous MOQs. They will try and make money out of shipping. They'll try and make money all the time.
Yeah, because they'll add on shipping as well, so they can.
Most of them always straight away go for air shipping. Yeah, air shipping. If you're ordering a lot of products or heavy products, it's so pricey. Yeah, I've had times before where the shipping is more than like 1,000 products itself. So it's like you have to go back and be like, look, I need cheaper shipping. It's weird because if you get a shipping price, it's not going to change, but they will always come out like, we can knock off this. It's like, well, is that DHL saying they can knock off $200? It's like they're adding money to it.
That's quite a good point to think to talk about is the different shipping routes as well, because automatically a lot of people will just go with whatever's quoted because they're not aware of what else is there. So just from my experience, you might be able to jump on this a bit more. The three main ones is obviously air shipping, freight, which is obviously you normally ship by boats, ship by ships.
It takes long though, but it's cheaper.
Yeah, and then you've got rail, which is the sort of in the middle.
I've had really bad experiences with sea shipping, so I that's just from my experience, like really bad. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, sea shipping. You're looking about.
I think if you're working on logistics and like you've sold a certain amount of your stock and you need it for like 6 weeks time or 4 weeks, like
has to be
air shipping. Because with sea shipping, I forgot what the word's called, custom clearing, all of that. It takes forever. It did anyway with me, and I was just put off so badly. I was like, I'd rather just.
It all depends on where you want to, how quick you want to get your products.
Yeah,
air is obviously quicker, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think the main goal probably not B2B wise, but for like people that are white labeling, private labeling, you want to eventually get to a stage where if you're using a fulfillment center in the UK, if you've got, let's say, 2,500 products sat in there, you should roughly know how long that stock is going to last you. Yeah. So then you'll be able to judge once you hit maybe 1,000 units left, you need to place that next order. If 100%. You're doing C shipping, because that's going to take X amount of time, you want to really get to that stage. So without knowing that stuff, which is always in the early stages, you don't know how much you're going to sell in what time. If you're not in a rush to launch your business, I would maybe recommend sea shipping. Hopefully I don't have bad experiences. But rail shipping, once again, like if it's a business where you're not too urgent, maybe you still got to get things up and running, rail shipping is good. But I've used that once for packaging for a product, and it took about 3 months. It was long. And like what you're saying, it was like it will reach a certain country.
None of our members will want that. They're like, you want it yesterday.
Right now, they're like, right, let's cross that one off. But like what you're saying, Alex, like once it hits like a different country or it hits a port or whatever, it's sitting there for about a week.
100%.
Just sat there. And it's
what I will say is never go with either the first option, or also never think, oh, that is my only option, sorry, because there's always ways around things. So for example, I know Tesco's, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other high street retailers do, they'll just want you to get to a fob, as in the port in China, and then they will use their distribution channels to then pick it up.
That's cool.
Another route is, for example, you need a certain amount done by a certain time, so you could air freight, say, a handful of it, enough to get by, and then sea ship the rest. So you can do split.
Also,
so to cut down costs in that way.
Talking about shipping, taxes as well, making sure that you calculate that with your profits. Because I've also done that before, where I'm like, oh, the products only cost this much. Then obviously you get the quote for the shipping. Then like you unexpectedly get this massive tax bill, and you're like, oh, okay, so now my profit's this. But it's like being aware of that before. It's not like a bad thing. It's just factoring it in, so you know this is your profit. This is what you can put on your ad. Because not
to scare members, but you can make good profit with products still.
It's just being aware of it. Because
doing your due diligence.
Most products will have enough profit in it, but when it is like, a couple of pounds off each, once you divide it by the quantity that you're getting, it is minimal. But it's just being aware of it.
The last thing we want people to do is like jump into like a product of some sort, and you're only giving yourself like a £15 profit margin. Like what you said, you need to factor in that ad spend. Starting off, you could be spending £5 to £10 per conversion, which is now you're left with like £5. Then obviously if you add in your own shipping fees on top of that, shipping it to the customer, you've then got taxes, if any of that's included in it, like you're literally left with a few quid. It's probably not worth it in that sense if you're just doing wire private labeling. So if you were to go for a product where your profit margins, you've got a big area to play around with, you might lose half your profit, but you've still got half sat there.
And this is all the things you've got to think about when you're doing your product selection. It's no point, like I said there, just because you like the idea of the product and then just running with it straight away, not working out all these equations, because your cost acquisition, how much it's going to cost for that customer, is there any repeat purchase out of it, how am I going to do
subscription models
subscription models? Can it be done monthly? For example, coffee, all right, yes, you'll lose money on potentially the first purchase, but then you make money by the subscription model and further down the line.
Exactly.
So there's other ways you can go about it. It's just making sure that you've done your due diligence first,
like what a lot of the members do, like talk to us first, because like you said, there's ideas where it might appear that there's not a lot of profit to begin with, but just seeing that longevity in it, having that business plan and being like, actually in 6 months you could be doing this and it will be profitable, which sometimes is a bit tricky to understand if you haven't like been through it before.
100%. I think like that comes down to people that just want to make a quick buck. You know what I mean? The e-commerce isn't about that. E-commerce, you want to be looking at the longevity of an online business. Like the first few months, like, be open to taking a loss. That I have in all of my years online, I've never seen someone jump into e-commerce, order products and then making a profit straight away. It just generally doesn't happen.
We have got a few members though, which have
done
that. Like,
it's a small percentage. It can happen, but you need to have the mindset of what you said, Rishi.
So the way I gear my B2C businesses and B2B businesses, what I always do is sort of reverse engineer, and my end goal is always to sell the company in some capacity, because that's how you make your big money, basically. Right, how do you do that? Well, it's got to be worth a value of some sort. Right, how do you get that? Well, it's whether acquiring data, whether it's acquiring customers, whether it's sales, whatever it is, and just keep working backwards from there. I would always, so for example, a mushroom coffee, I would look at, right, how many monthly paying subscriptions do we need to piss the local competitors, or not local competitors, the competitors, so they basically buy you out. And that's always my end goal is, right, what do I need to do to annoy enough people for them to buy you out? So that's I always think is, right, what do I need to do? So you take into account everything from your product pricing, how many customers you need, shipping, all that sort of thing, and advertising. So that would be my first thing is, right, what is your end goal? Because a lot of people won't even think about an end goal because they're rushing to get this product off the...
Making quick money.
Yeah, making quick money.
That's it.
Branding as well. You know, branding's not shouted out enough. Branding can get you sort of 8% of the sales sometimes, because how many times you go down the street and you think, oh, that looks cool, without even knowing what the hell it is, just because the brand shouts at you.
I've had it so many times where some, like, obviously talking about brands, they're like, oh, have you seen this brand? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then, like, I'll go out in a few days, I'm like, oh my God, that's that brand everywhere. They're talking about. And that's another thing that people don't realise how important just word of mouth off a single person can really make a big impact. And in the early stages of your business, you can really, like, emphasise that, because you can pay that attention to detail with each customer. Like, you know, would you mind sharing it on your Instagram page? You can be a lot more personal for them to generate that brand awareness with you, making the experience so nice that they want to, like, tell their friends. Like, I've bought stuff where I've been like, oh, that's so nice. Like, and when you meet up with your friend, you're like, oh, I bought this, it's so cool. Like, it came the next day.
Some of the biggest brands, and I'll talk Grenade out there as an example, the protein bar. Yeah. So they've just sold it to Cadbury's. He's just sold it out. I think it was 70 million. He sold it to Cadbury's.
And been around long as well, have they?
6 years, I think. No, slightly. He left when I left military, so 2014, 2013. Jesus. So within that time,
hopefully they taste better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it was the biggest selling chocolate bar last year and the year before. And it's a Grenade bar, it's a protein bar.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But the branding's on point. Okay, they initially lost a lot of money to get to where they were. And
is
then
that
they
the
had
one
an
with,
exit.
like, the circle symbol?
The grenade symbol.
Yes, it's Grenade. So they used to do...
See, how weird's that I've never bought it. I don't buy protein bars.
Picture the product.
But I can, and it's like that shiny... how do I know
that?
Yeah, it's
a psychological thing, but the way they managed to get their dominance, because I was listening to podcasts, was petrol stations, because it was always convenient, but the way he got it in there was he had to persuade one petrol station to get it and say, look, I promise you'll sell it. And then, because petrol station is one of the sort of most competitive shelf spaces, because how little room they've got, but how busy they are. And that's how they basically blew up. But what I was going back to was how they got big in the first place is creating a hardcore engaged audience, or hardcore engaged network. So they had a lot of people who would go and tell their friends, you need to do this, you need to do that, because that's worth so much more than any advertising. Yeah, you get people to buy into your product and your story, they sell it for you. So yeah, Grenade was one to have a look at, and obviously they've got an exit plan, 70 million, lovely.
Nice, they'll be moving on to the next business. There was what was the other one? Tenzing. Have you seen those energy drinks?
Yeah, I've seen them.
Tenzing, yes. So the owner or the founder of it used to be high up, like one of the directors or something of Red Bull. And he just saw the potential of it. There wasn't too much of like a market at the time. I think it's dominated by Monster, Relentless, and a few other little brands. So he went out there and pushed Tenzing, but he wanted to situate that as not as premium as Red Bull, but more healthy, as a healthy option. At that time, there was no healthy options for that. So he pushed it out, and over time, the price has crept up with that. And I think Tenzing's worth like millions now from that. But it comes down to the branding, the way they've like portrayed their brand. It's not, when you go to like a petrol station, you'll see the expensive energy drinks, mainly Red Bull, normally that cost most, and you'll see the sort of cheaper ones and stuff. They position themselves perfectly in the market, where they're sort of, not cheap, they're not the best premium, but they've got the unique selling points that none of the other ones have. So just like with little things like that of your brands, but like moving away from energy drinks, but like branding's so important. Like in this generation, people are like, they're more keen on what a brand looks like rather than the product half the time.
Yeah,
you look
and
at
what your brand stands for
exactly,
as well.
yeah. But you look at, like, just use a random example, headphones and stuff. Before, everyone had all different types of headphones. There was it Skull Candy?
Yeah.
Them, I don't even see them anymore. JBL, there was them headphones. I don't really know anyone that has them. You had Sony, like all of these brands. Now it's just dominated by Apple. Yeah. Or dominated by
Beats,
a couple
Beats.
of Beats and stuff like that. It's because everyone wants that sort of product. The brand's well known, Beats is well known,
and also people see other people wearing them and think, oh, well, if it's all right for them, I must wear them.
It's like when I can remember, this is a few years ago, and I still had my headphones with the wire.
Oh god!
In the gym, and I was like, oh, like
last
really,
week,
like, but they were fine. Like I didn't really care, but it was just because everyone was then moving to like
the wireless little
wearing them. This was a few years ago, but I was like, I just bought them because.
You're cool.
Everyone else was getting them, so I was like, okay.
Yeah. But you don't know, like, you're doing it. You just think, oh, everyone else has got them. I'll get them.
That's why branding is all about psychology.
100%. When you was talking about like the profit, Reese, about the energy drink going back a little bit, but it was they weren't making much profit at the start.
100%. Yeah.
And then now, because they're so big, they can then up their prices.
Yeah.
So people need to factor that in as well. You don't have to really worry too much about the profit at the beginning, because you can always up your cost later on down the line.
But interestingly, if you've got a powerful brand,
just quickly, when
they
first launched, how cheap were they? And now look at them.
But interestingly, if you've got a powerful brand, you could be positioned in a petrol station where price is always a little more, or you could be in a supermarket where cheaper. You can go to like Harrods and get it even more expensive. It doesn't matter where it's sold because the price is differentiated. But if you've got the brand, it stays the same and consistent.
But when I think back to LA, like our products started at £35 to now where they're 80.
That's crazy.
So even at 35, we were still making
Freddo.
good product.
Yeah. And that's down to the branding and the brand of the product.
Yeah. And when I was doing it locally, people thought I had bought a franchise. They didn't think it was my brand.
That's crazy, ain't it?
Just
That's crazy.
A little bit of patience.
Yeah.
Do you know what
But
I
then
mean?
that comes down once again to not having the mindset of making a quick buck, being in it for the long term. Because like at the beginning, you're not gonna be super successful. It takes time to get to that stage. 100%. And then, like what you said, the ultimate goal is. Unless you're really passionate about what you're doing, keep it, grow it, scale
unless it's a family-run business and you want to keep it in the family,
pass it down.
You should but you should always have like I prefer reverse engineering. So I always like to think of an exit, but I know it's not for everyone. I know, but I think we could definitely do a part 2 with
100%
with that long-term visions because I think people are very short-sighted in this game. And I think we should definitely do a part 2 of long-term planning.
We should do a long-term business planning. Something like that would be good. But
no, I've enjoyed this.
It's been a good one. A lot of different angles. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. And can't wait to see you all on the next one.